So that is what we're going to be reading today. I have saved a bunch of Reddit stories that I think fit the theme, and we will be reading them. As always, thank you for watching this video. If you do enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out a lot. Also, I do sound a bit nasally right now. I'm honestly not sure why. I feel fine, but my fiance was sick recently, so let's hope that I'm not slowly contracting what he had. But anyway, let's just get into the video. Okay, this first story is by a deleted account. It's titled Homestalker / potential invader. This happened last Friday, and I'm still stumped. For reference, I'm a male in my late 20s and live with my girlfriend who is currently away on business. I work for a large financial institution in the UK and often work till very late as I hate bringing work home. For some background info, we bought our current house a few weeks ago, and during the move-in process I was away with work, leaving it down to my partner and a few friends. My car has also recently had a complete electronics failure, so we were down to using just her car. The house itself is located in a small gated community off of a country road on the outskirts of an upmarket town in the UK. It's surrounded by woodlands, and if you didn't live there or know somebody who does, chances are you wouldn't have heard of it or even knew of its existence. In total, there are 8 houses in the community, and the main gate gives access to the first 6, where my house is located, and then there's a further 2 gates at the top of the road, which lead to 2 very large mansion-style houses. The houses which haven't got individual gates are all about 100 feet away from each other and have enclosed rear gardens, and the neighbours are all business types who are very often in work and keep themselves to themselves. Anyway, about 2 days after leaving for my business trip, I get a call from my girlfriend who seems shaken and tells me that there's a man standing in the garden and that she can't see his face, but he's walking around and crouching in the tree line. So, concerned, but not 100% convinced, as she does have a vivid imagination and it's the first time she's been home alone in our new house, I tell her to lock the doors, go to bed, and call the police if she sees him again. I return to our city's train station on Tuesday and agree with my girlfriend that she'll pick me up in her car. Then I'll take it home as she's scheduled to go to Manchester for a conference. I I meet up with her, grab a coffee, see her off to her train, then drive her car back to our house. The time is roughly 9 p.m. I park the car on the driveway, head inside, shower, watch some reruns of King of the Hill, then head to bed. Then I get woken up by a light being shone into the bedroom window from downstairs. I get up to investigate, crouching to avoid being seen, and head into the study next to our bedroom and open the curtains that cover some French doors that lead to a small balcony. My heart drops when I see that a man has now moved towards the back door and is trying the handle. The house is in an L shape, so although I can see him, he can't see me without moving around from the back door. He stops for a while, begins flashing the light on and off back into the woods before walking calmly back into them. I call the police and make a report. Nothing happens on Wednesday, but on Thursday, when I'm giving our cat a bath, she's a sphinx, she needs them. I hear the garage door being messed with. I'm in the bathroom directly behind the garage, so move into the kitchen to get a knife before heading into the garage to check what's going on. When the noises stop, and I hear running down the driveway and away from the house. I call the police and they send an officer around to check the property. All they find is some knife marks and scuffs on the bottom of the garage. On Friday, I get my car delivered from the dealership and decide to work from home. I also park my car in the garage, leaving my girlfriends on the drive. At around 11 p.m, I'm in the upstairs study, listening to music and working when I find myself freezing. I thought I was going to stop breathing as I felt someone watching me. And turning to face the French doors, I see a man, nondescript looking, around 35, wearing a coat and gloves, carrying what looked like a torch, standing on my balcony. Our eyes meet. Now filled with rage, I go for one of my golf clubs from my golf bag and charge towards the door. He climbs down off the balcony and runs off into the woods. I've never seen this man in my life before, but I'm sure it's the man that's been causing problems recently. It's also dawned on me that he would have only seen my girlfriend before, and only seen her car. Maybe he thought she lived alone. I've notified the police and have bought some more security devices to install on the property as well as parked my car on the drive with hers. We don't know who he is or why he's doing this, but we're hoping it won't happen again. Update. Sorry for the amount of time that has lapsed since I posted this originally. Life has been hectic, and in all honesty, these events have become more personal and traumatic, which has resulted in us searching for our next home. Luckily, we have cleared our small mortgage by making as many overpayments as possible, so we were able to get out, but due to the lockdown situation here in the UK, our search has been put on hold. Unfortunately, our cat went missing 4 months ago. She was only 2 years old, and unfortunately we don't hold out much hope of finding her. Around 2 months ago, I returned home to find her collar placed on the outdoor seating we have. I believe this to be an antagonistic move by the person or people since changed my car due to continued electronic glitches and software issues, and have had the new car damaged. I have also had the number plates unscrewed and placed inside of our hot tub at the rear end of the property. A high-powered laser has also been shone from the woods behind our house into the living room on evenings. I have some footage of a figure moving around in the woods in the evening, but it's not too clear. The cameras we had ordered were pretty useless and were destroyed within 2 weeks of having them when my partner and I were away. We are now certain that whoever is doing this is not looking to commit any act of theft, but to intimidate or harass us. I have ventured into the woods behind my house, along with an ex-forces friend, to look for any signs of life and to get a better idea of where these people may be coming from, but we found nothing, although we both felt watched the entire time, and Greg, my pal from the army, even acknowledged this himself. This is a guy who is pretty hard to shake and has done several tours of service. We are hoping that we will be able to relocate when the lockdown is ended and life returns to some type of normality. Thanks for everyone's interest and support. Okay, so the OP was also saying in the comments that they spend weeks setting up lights and cameras and dash cams in both of the cars, but all of these things were not very helpful as they either didn't work, were destroyed, or just didn't catch anything. Somebody else in the comments said maybe get a dog. Dogs scare people, especially big ones, or at the very least serve as good like alarms, because they know and hear people way before you do. Someone else in the comments said, this guy likely isn't working alone, he was communicating with someone in the woods with the flashlight. That story is really creepy. I also would want to move because I just could not deal with that. It's very unfortunate. Okay, the next story is by Cheesed via 666, and it is titled, My Childhood Stalker Tried to Murder My Best Friend. Back in 1998 or 99, I was around 5 or 6 years old and living in a crime and drug-ridden part of the downtown area. Our house had a giant backyard that was full of thick jungle-like trees and bushes that had been taken over by the earth, and also random passers-by. We knew this due to the heroin needles that were around and half a mattress that had once been on the forest floor that had since grown 15 feet into the air with the trees. There was also a path that people would use as a shortcut to the main road, so there was a lot of traffic with shady people passing through. When you're a kid, this is a nightmare of a backyard, so I was spooked since the time we moved in. I would complain constantly to my mum about someone watching me from outside my window when I would try to sleep. Once or twice there had been times of him watching me, and he had shined a flashlight in my room, and I saw a flash of his face which I can still picture. His dark eyes burned through me, and for a while I never said anything, but eventually I told someone. My mum always said it was just a nightmare, and brushed it off a week or two while ignoring my relentless complaints. Eventually, after having to fight with me to go to sleep one night, my mum had dragged me outside the next morning to prove me wrong. We went outside to my window, and to her surprise, the grass had been stomped on only outside of my window, to the point that the grass was almost all dead and mud remained. There was also tons of scratch marks from a tool of some kind outside the window, as if someone was trying to break in. I was in a basement with one of those small windows that don't open, so breaking in through there is super unlikely, but it still shook my family. My mum was horrified and had started making plans to move, but we were so broke growing up that leaving right away was not an option. Around that same time, me and my best friend, who was also my next door neighbour, had become inseparable. We hung out almost constantly and had no sense of danger, and would do dumb stuff like go to other neighbours' houses and ask for candy. Our favourite was this elderly lady who always had hostess cakes for us, and we would actually go inside her house to hang out there. She was unbelievably nice and took care of us in a way. Our parents had no idea we did this, but it was our little secret. One day we were playing around the neighbourhood and my mum yelled for me to come home so we could go pick up dinner just around the corner. We were only gone for 15 minutes at most, and when we came back to the house we were in complete shock. The street was closed off with crime scene tape. There were 2 or 3 news station vans, a dozen police cars, and either a life flight helicopter getting ready to touch down or a news helicopter. While we were gone getting food, a man who was not from my neighbourhood but had been staying with his mum for the last few weeks had walked past my best friend's yard and saw her on the phone. She was talking to a friend and making faces, or whatever young kids do, and this man thought she was making fun of him and talking about him on the phone. The man got so upset at the thought of someone making fun of him that he walked back to his mum's house and came back with a butcher knife and was planning on killing this girl for mistreating him. Because of where she was sitting on the porch, she could see him coming back with the knife and ran inside the home and locked herself in the bathroom and called the police with the phone that she luckily already had in her hand. Unfortunately, my friend's mum was in the kitchen and was not as lucky. The man took his anger out on her mother and stabbed her so many times that I can't even remember the number, but I think it was in the 20s. Edit, I pulled the Salt Lake Tribune article from 1998 titled "Man Booked in Stabbing," and it was 7 times, not 20. Somehow, after the amount of times her mother was stabbed, she survived and made a full recovery after many surgeries. After his arrest, the story was all over the news, and I remember watching it with my mum pretty religiously to make sure my mum's friend was alright. They posted his mugshot, and I remember the most intense amount of fear flowing through me. The man who stabbed this woman was also the man who would watch me outside my window. I later found out that we had met this man weeks earlier, at the elderly lady's house we had frequented for candy. It was her son, and he had initially met us at her house, and had been keeping an eye on us ever since. He had only gotten out of prison a month or so earlier and was staying with her since his release. I never took note of him when we first met, but maybe if I did, I would have known right away who my night stalker was, and could have prevented all that happened after. We never did end up moving, so we stayed another year. To this day, I never sleep with the blinds open. To the creep who would watch me sleep and try to murder my friend and her mother, I hope we never meet and you're rotting in jail somewhere. That is terrifying. That is so scary. I have a irrational fear of looking out the window at night because I always expect there to be someone like looking back, which is stupid. It's probably from the amount of horror films and stories that I've consumed. So that is like terrible to me, like to think about. And then, you know, how unhinged that man was, going after a kid and like brutalizing her mother over something so small. Like, even if she was making fun of him, like, that's a child, get over it. Why is your ego so fragile? And if she wasn't, which she probably wasn't because she was talking to her friend, like, you're delusional. You need, like, help. So clearly mentally unstable. Okay, this next story is by Seam_B. It's titled My Nighttime Park Stalker. At the time this happened, I was 13, female. So this happened 2 years ago, and I was fairly naive. I was a major introvert, only friends with a few people in my class. I wanted to be social, but I preferred to be alone and read or write. Classic nerd things. In early November, I got a text on my phone that was from a few classmates whose phone numbers I had, and around 1 or 2 I couldn't recognize. It was a group chat asking if we wanted to hang out at night near a park at our school. My parents, being strict and paranoid, would never let me go. Luckily, or what I thought was luck, they were heading out for an overnight trip. They would be back around 4 in the morning. Everything fell into place. Once my parents left around 8ish, I ran out the door and made my way to the park. The only thing I made sure to do was lock the door. My parents were paranoid after all, and it was their biggest thing that they engraved into me. Once I arrived at the park, I noticed a creepy figure near the edge of the woods. No one else seemed to notice it, and I already had enough reputation as a weirdo who was true crime obsessed, so I didn't mention it. The night drew on and on. I was having the time of my life, ignoring the gut feeling I had telling me to run. Every so often I would look over my shoulder and the man would still be standing there. Around 9:45, 4 out of the 10 people there had to leave due to their curfew. It was getting cold and was nearly pitch black with a few street lights every so often. The rest of us decided to go as well, since it felt more eerie and quiet. The place we were hanging out at was a field that was fenced in with a few exits and entrances. A large wide field with a small park in the back and our giant middle school behind us. The front of the field faced the empty road, and the right and left sides were surrounded by forest. All of the people left were getting picked up by cars, meaning they went the opposite way of the road, since that's where the parking lot was. The man stood by the right forest road exit that I needed to take to get home. I walked away from my group and tried to steady my heavy breathing. I didn't want to be paranoid, but all the true crime I listened to was catching up to me. The man was probably early 40s or late 30s, dark hair with a beard. He was probably around 5'9", but at the time it seemed like 6 foot. He stood about 10 feet from the exit I had to take, so when I got close enough to it, I ran for about 30 feet through the exit and through the woods. Once I felt safe enough, I started just to quickly walk through the woods, or at least get to the road. I heard a snap and a crunch from behind me. I stopped walking for a second and quickly checked over my shoulder. Around 15 feet behind me stood the very same man. He was walking slowly behind me, almost as if he was trying not to be suspicious, but it only made my fear worse. I turned around and walked so quickly, I was basically jogging. I lived about 10 minutes away from the park we had hung out at, and I wasn't athletic enough to run home. After around 7 minutes of walking fast, I was in my neighborhood. I knew that I could run to my house if I had to, so I checked to see if he was still trailing behind me. To my horror, he was only 5 feet away. I ran. I ran faster than I've ever run before. I could hear his footsteps behind me thumping across the concrete as he ran too. I dove down an alleyway I knew well and tried to lose him in a park, making my way home longer. I could hear his heavy breath followed by his footsteps as he tried to keep up. I cut through houses, backyards, and front yards. I finally made it to my house and flew up the steps. I looked behind me and he had just arrived at the bottom of the stairs. I looked at the door. I unlocked the door and burst through it, shoving it closed behind me, and I heard him hit the door with his whole body. I ran around the house and locked all the windows, turned off the lights and hid in my bedroom with a kitchen knife, just in case he got in. He didn't, luckily. If this was a better world, that's where my story would end, but it doesn't. After a few months, I haven't really told anyone what's happened since. Since I don't want to get in trouble with my parents for sneaking out or anything. I didn't go out with anyone or any group anymore, and my loner status returned. I began to write horror stories as a coping mechanism and never went out past 7. It was around February when a classmate of mine was sharing a story of some random man following her home on the bus. She described him almost the exact same as the man who had chased me home. Another girl mentioned that he sounded like the guy who stood outside the school and tried to follow her home. I didn't join in, but everyone agreed that he was just a weird guy. He was kind of forgotten, and eventually I moved on to him. Around May, I was getting ready to walk to school when my mum pulled me aside and showed me a picture of a man, the guy who had stalked me. She told me that he had been arrested 2 weeks ago for sexually assaulting a child and had escaped last night. She told me to keep an eye out for him and to call the cops if I saw him. I was shaking the whole time. I was shaking the whole time I walked to school. It haunts me to know that if he had caught me, I would most likely be in her position or even dead. So, creepy nighttime stalker who liked to hunt down young girls and sexually assault them. Let's not meet again. Some mistakes were made in my post. I meant taken into custody but not arrested. That is so scary. So scary. I know that as a younger kid or teen, literally the worst thing, like the thing you fear the most, is getting in trouble, especially with your parents. But please, if you are young and anything like this happens, no matter how much trouble you think you're gonna get in, please tell an adult, because it is so important to your safety, and you could potentially save someone else by getting that information out there. So please, please, spread the information. It's not worth risking yourself just so that you don't get into trouble. I promise you, it's really not. Okay. This next story is by 2 + 2 = Jessica. It is titled, "Stalker who watched me through my windows and came into my apartment might be back in my life." Three years ago, I was living with my then boyfriend in a one-bedroom apartment in a little mountain town. It was a half-basement unit, so the bottom of all our windows were level with the ground outside. It was also an older apartment, and not all the windows could fully lock. One day, my boyfriend comes home from work while I'm laying on the sofa, and immediately runs up to the window near me and looks out of it frantically. He then goes to look out every other window in the house, then walks around the outside looking in the windows. When he comes back from this confusing exploit, I ask him what is going on and why he's being weird. "I think I just walked up on a dude looking in the window at you. He took off as I walked up," he tells me. This was naturally very unsettling, but after discussing it and considering the time of day, it was about 2 p.m, and the number of people out and about around the complex at that time, we came to the conclusion that it was just a curious neighbour or someone passing by happening to glance in. With that, we forgot about it. If only that was the end. For the next couple of months, odd stuff happened here and there. Someone would knock on the door occasionally, then when I went to answer, no one was there. I'd find things in my apartment that I wasn't familiar with, or things like clothing items would vanish. I didn't really think twice about any of it until one night. My boyfriend and I were arguing around 1 or 2 in the morning, and we were being a little loud. We were standing in the kitchen face to face, his back to an open window with the blinds up halfway, and I was facing it. Amidst our arguing, I glanced behind him at the window, thinking I saw the reflection of my face in it. The window was open. It wasn't my face. There was a man with his face pressed almost against the window screen watching us. Given the fact that we were arguing and it was late, I thought for a moment it might have been a concerned neighbour walking up to the window to speak to us. A main walkway for the complex was right on the other side of the window, so I spoke to him. "Hello, can I help you?" I asked responded to this by staring, unwavering and cold, right at me. His face did not change expression. He did not blink or move, just looked right at me, a way I have never been looked at before or since. In this instant, I also realized that because of the window being level with the ground, the only way this man's face could be where it was if he was laying on the ground outside the apartment, or crouched and contorted to look into the window. My heart sank. I buried my face in my boyfriend's chest and closed my eyes in fear. My boyfriend, up to this point, thought I was messing with him. When I buried my face in his chest, only then did he say, "Is there really someone at the window?" I whispered yes to him. He felt my fear and took a moment before he turned around. By the time he did, the man was gone. It was at this point I started to think about all the little odd occurrences that I'd been experiencing. I assumed the worst. I filed a police report with his description, and my brother loaded my apartment up with weapons to protect me, or at least inform this peeping Tom that I was armed. After that night, myself, my boyfriend, and my brother were on high alert. There were a couple of times when my brother came over that he saw a sketchy dude hanging around, and even one time he saw him at my window. He tried to follow him discreetly, but the guy took off running as soon as my brother stepped in his direction. The last night I had an experience with this man. I was sitting home alone on my sofa. My boyfriend was at work at a restaurant about 2 blocks away. He had picked me up from work an hour earlier. We had sat on the sofa together a little while when we got home. Then he kissed me and left for work, locking the door behind him. After he left, I continued to sit on the couch on Reddit for a while in silence. After about an hour of me sitting there in silence, I heard a door creak open. It's a small apartment, so to see the bedroom and bathroom doors from the couch, all I had to do was lean a little to the left. I assumed it was one of my cats going out of my bedroom, so you can imagine my shock when I lean over and see the door that's opening is the door to the water heater closet / small storage space. I look to my right and see both my cats sleeping soundly at the other end of the couch. I look back to the door and it's still creaking open very slowly. It opens enough for me to see it, a set of fingers wrapped around the door, easing the door ever so gently open to be as quiet as possible. That was gonna be a no from me. I ran my ass barefooted out the door, into the snow, and down the street to my boyfriend's work. I called the cops. When everyone was back to check out the apartment, he was, of course, gone. After that, my boyfriend and I packed our stuff, went to stay with my parents, and 6 months later moved 1,000 miles away from that town. That was the end of it. I initially found this sub around that time as I was trying to find other stories similar to mine, or people to talk to who had experienced something like I did. I had intended to write my story here eventually, and I figured after this week's events I had to. I live 1,000 miles away from where all this happened, so a part of me thinks there is no way this person could have found me. But last week, I heard a knock on the door of my apartment. I was expecting a package, so I figured it was a delivery driver and didn't answer. I'd go get the package later. Then they knocked again and again. The third one made me feel uneasy, so I waited a good 20 minutes to check the door. When I did, there was no package, no note, nothing. Someone was just knocking. Although it made me uneasy, I didn't initially think back to my stressful experience in my last town. Then, 2 days ago, I went out to get groceries. I have a little patio and I go out there in the mornings to just chill or check on plants a lot, and I've been known to leave it unlocked in the day on accident. Never thought of it as a huge deal until I came home from the store 2 days ago and the deadbolt to my apartment was locked. The deadbolt that can only be locked from the inside of the apartment. I assume someone robbed me because I dumbly left my patio unlocked. I called my sister. I called my current / new boyfriend. I waited dumbly. I waited for people to be with me, and I went into my apartment through the sliding glass patio door. Nothing was out of place, nothing of value was taken. At this point, my heart sank. Nothing was touched or stolen. Someone was inside my apartment just because they wanted to be. I told my boyfriend about my stalker, and he is not taking it lightly like my past boyfriend. I filed a police report. We checked for recording devices and cameras. He put Nest cameras up all over the place and we're on high alert. I really truly hope this is a coincidence, but if this man really followed me across multiple state lines, there's no one on this earth I'm less interested in meeting. That is so scary. If that's a coincidence, then that's crazy. And if it's not a coincidence, then that is just insanely terrifying, in my opinion, for someone to go to such lengths to follow you. Okay, let's do this one. This one is by Jenny10126, and it's titled Walmart Stalker. When I was 18, I got a job at Walmart. Small town, not much else there for someone fresh out of high school. I'd been there about a month and worked in the jewelry department, usually from mid-afternoon until the department closed at 9 p.m. and I would close the department myself, but obviously Walmart is open 24 hours, so other people were always around. One night, I'm locking the cases up and putting things away, and an overnight stalker walks by and says hi. I look up, smile, and say hi back, then go about my business. This guy, the only way I can describe him is to say he looks like one of the Bee Gees. Shoulder-length frizzy hair, kind of bouncy up to a step when he walked, mid-50s. This started to become a regular thing. On nights I closed by myself, he'd walk by and say hi, and I would say hi back. That's it. No conversations ever took place. Then on my birthday, a few of my friends who worked there got me cake and I hugged them and said thank you, etc. About an hour later, Mr. Bee Gees comes around with a birthday card and gave it to my manager to give to me. Manager thought it was extremely funny that this weirdo got me a card, until I opened it. Happy birthday. I saw you hugging those guys earlier. It made me really mad, but I called a friend and talked it out, and he made me realize you're allowed to have friends of other than me. Just please don't hug them anymore. Save those hugs for me. I don't know what kind of emotion showed on my face, but my manager grabbed the card and read it, then walked me back to the store manager's office and showed it to him. Store manager said the guy was obviously joking, but that he would talk to him about it. I didn't see Mr. BG's around for a week, until one night while I was closing, he plunked down a stuffed envelope on my counter as he walked by without a word. Inside was 6 pages, front and back, of pure crazy. It was basically his entire life story, all about his family and schools he went to, but with weird stuff like how his sister was a psychic and his father was an exorcist, and all sorts of weirdness. The end of the letter was about how his friend, who was 18 months old, was missing, and he knew she was being raped because he could hear her screaming his name in his dreams. So that also went to the store manager, and he had me write a written complaint, and he told me not to go outside by myself and not to wander near where the guy might be while I'm on my breaks. No, get rid of him. Two nights later, I was finishing up for the night, and the way the counter is set up, there is one opening, and the counters go all the way around both sides. He brought a handcart around with boxes from my department, but pushed it into the only opening in the counters, so I was trapped inside. He then just stood there and stared at me while I looked at him with what I'm sure was terror. I was then, and still am now, riddled with anxiety. I don't like confrontation, and the last thing I wanted was for this weirdo to confront me about reporting him twice. He whispers, "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you." I turned around and started finishing my closing tasks, pretending he wasn't there, even though I could feel him watching me. After a few minutes, I just looked at him and said, "Weren't you told to stay away from me?" He gave me this gross predator grin and said, "Store manager's name," asked me if I was joking. I told him I was. Then he leaned in as close to me as he could get with the counter between us and whispered, "But I'm not joking," then walked away. For 2 weeks after that, he would randomly show up wherever I was. I would leave for lunch and he would be there. Even non-work places, I would go to the mall, he would be there. Another department manager told me he had been reported by 4 other people over the last 2 years for very similar behaviour. I again went to my store manager, who told me the guy was harmless and maybe had a little bit of a crush. He was in his 50s and I was 18, 19 during this. A week later I gave my notice and quit. He still works there, 13 years later, and he still gives me the heebie-jeebies. That is insane. I'm sorry, but if I were you, obviously it's easier to say that as like an older adult who's not in the situation, but I feel like you should have, if you felt comfortable, definitely tried to complain to a higher up, like a regional manager or something, because your store manager is vile for like allowing this creep's behaviour. The fact that he basically said like, don't be alone with him, stay away from him, be on the lookout, means he thinks that the other worker is a potential danger, yet won't fire him, like won't give him the sack. That's terrible. And I'm sorry, but the thing about raping a 2-year-old or something like that, should that not have been handed into the police, because that's deeply concerning to write about, whether it's true or not. sucks that the OP had to quit when that guy's been written up so many times by different people and he's still working there. Like, that is terrible management. That's awful. This next story is by Drunk Carrie Fisher and it's titled Hotel Stalker. I worked as a flight attendant for a few years. When I decided to take an extended sabbatical from college, there were a handful of L&M situations I encountered, but one in particular still makes my skin crawl more than any other. I believe L&M means let's not meet witches threaded. I was born and raised in Texas, but had moved to New York when I was 21. So when I found out at the beginning of a week-long trip that I'd have a couple of overnights in Austin, I was super excited to go to my housemate for a few days. Homestake. I can't read today. I can't read any day, I'm terrible. My brother lived just north of the city and we planned to hang out and go to dinner the night I arrived when he got off work. And the following day, we were going to meet up with our dad who lived about an hour away. So I get to the hotel downtown. The crew and I check in and then we each head off to our rooms. Short elevator ride and I get to mine. We're not even 5 minutes later, there's a loud hard knock on the door. It was only around 1 or 2 p.m. and I hadn't called either my dad or my brother to let them know I was in town yet, so they wouldn't know what room. I assumed it was maybe one of my crewmates, so I headed to the door. Before even making it to the door, however, a loud male voice on the other side boomed. The front desk sent me about the bathroom problem you called in. Before trying to open the door, unlock the door and open up, miss. I need in now. I froze in my tracks. I hadn't even been in the bathroom yet, let alone called anything to the front desk. I'm a petite chick, and while I take no shit from anyone despite my size, I still err on the side of caution. Slowly inching forward to the door to look out the peephole, all I could tell was that the man on the other side was at least 6 feet tall and easily over double my weight. No way in hell was I going to unlock the door. I responded to the guy, telling him he must have had the wrong room. He continued pounding on the door while constantly turning the handle, telling me no, he needed in and was getting in the room one way or another. I panicked, but thankfully had the sense to grab the phone and call the front desk. The concierge confirmed that they had neither sent anyone up to my room, nor had they received a call about the bathroom. The entire time this guy was still determined to get in my room, pounding and yelling. Lucky for me, the front desk had dispatched security to my floor. When the security officers step off the elevator a few seconds later, I can hear them in the hall approach and ask the guy who he was, what he was doing, and telling him he needed to leave the hotel. He immediately gets hostile and aggressive toward them, and the front desk clerk I'm still on the phone with tells me police have been called and are on their way. In the meantime, I'm trapped in my room. Long story short, the cops show up pretty quickly and manage to arrest the guy for trespassing and criminal menacing or something. I later found out that the guy was also wanted in connection to a string of break-ins and violent sexual assaults in Austin. He had seen and stalked me from the minute I entered the hotel lobby. Apparently, I was exactly his type of victim. Nothing else happened after that, but it still rattled me for the rest of my stay in that hotel. so glad that the OP of this story looked out the people rather than just opening the door, because I mean, I definitely would do the same. But a lot of people would either not catch on so quickly, think, oh damn, I never called in about the bathroom, or would assume that, I'm in a hotel, I'm surrounded by people, there's staff and people everywhere that are staying in the hotel. There's no way someone's gonna try and do anything nefarious, which is unfortunately untrue. This next story is by Ribbon Lover. It's titled Stalker in New York City. This was back in 2013 when I was living in NYC as a 23-year-old. I was living with my best friend from college on the west side near Times Square and K-Town. I was going through some tough times back then, as I was unemployed at that time. I had a lot of time, so I would go on walks by myself to clear my head time to time. One night I was feeling especially depressed, so I decided to walk to K-Town to grab a drink by myself. I'm Korean, by the way. I walked into a Korean bar and I got some weird looks from the waiter as I asked for a table by myself. After ordering a couple of soju bottles, I was feeling pretty drunk, so I decided to walk back home. However, as I was exiting out of the bar, this Korean guy followed me. He looked very normal, just like a nice Korean guy. He told me that he saw me drinking at the bar by myself, and that he would love to walk me home to make sure I got home safe. I politely declined. After all, my apartment was pretty close, but he insisted and he looked harmless, so I decided to take him up on his offer. We walked 10 minutes, I think, and it was quite pleasant. We were both a little drunk, but I remember talking about all sorts of things, nothing personal. When we finally arrived at my apartment, I thanked him and wished him farewell. Now, my apartment was a 5-story walk up, and there was a main door where we needed a key to open to get into the building. No doorman. I didn't think much of it and inserted the key to open the door and went in. The door takes a while to close shut, and it was my mistake for not checking before I went up the stairs. While I was approaching the second floor, I heard someone grab the door from closing, and I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I literally got goosebumps all over my body, and I felt like I was in danger. As I started to pick up the pace, I heard the footsteps going faster up the stairs. I lived on the 5th floor, and I started to run up, clutching my keys in my hand. The guy started to run up the stairs as well, and I could literally hear him getting closer and closer to me. This all happened in a couple of seconds, but it felt so long. I finally got to my floor, and as I tried to open the door, I looked back and literally saw the guy's head on the staircase. I rushed to open the door, and I managed to close the door right on his face. My heart was beating so fast, and I didn't know what to do at that point. It was already 3 a.m. and my roommate was asleep. Luckily, he didn't knock or anything, so I just decided to go to my room and hope that he's gone home. Around 7 a.m., my roommate woke me up. She said that there is a man standing in front of our apartment door. My heart sank, and I explained the whole situation to her. She and I went to the door and screamed that we were going to call the police if he doesn't go home. I looked at the people, and he told me that he will only go home if I gave him my number. We then called the police and saw him being escorted out. My roommate had to go to work, so she left the apartment and called me a few minutes later. She told me that she saw the guy speaking to the police downstairs. Apparently, he tried to lie to the officers that I'm his girlfriend and that we got into a fight. My roommate went up to them and explained to the officers that I do not have a boyfriend and that she doesn't know him at all. The police let him off with a warning. hours later, I heard a buzz from the main door downstairs. Maybe it's the police. Surely it can't be him again. I answered the intercom and I was shocked. It was him again. Just give me your number and I'll go away, he said. I warned him that I'm going to call the police again. If he doesn't leave. A couple minutes later, I heard ferocious knocks on my door. He must have gotten in when someone was entering the building. I was so scared at that point, so I immediately called the police. Unfortunately, the guy ran away before the police got there. The worst part about this experience was that my roommate and I were so scared to leave and come back to our apartment. I would have anxiety every time I came home, worried that I might see him in front of our apartment door. For about a week, the police escorted us when we felt scared, bless them. I never saw him again, but it was one of the scariest moments of my life. So creepy stalker dude, let's not meet. That is horrifying. I absolutely hate that. I hate it so much. That's like one of my fears with apartments like that, because over here it's very often, especially in the uni apartments, for people who have went on a night out or something to like have forgotten their key card, so people hang out outside until someone comes and they're like, oh, can you let me in, like I've left my key card. And so far in my experience that has always like been the case, like from what I've heard from people, because I didn't go to uni, but from what I've heard of people, like it has always been the case. But I always wonder and worry about, like, how do you know for sure that that person isn't lying and like have like bad intentions, you know? Like, I don't want to be an a-hole and basically leave someone locked outside in the cold, but I also don't want to be the reason why someone gets harmed by letting someone in. So this next one is titled I almost let my sister stalker into my house. This happened a few days ago and I'm still pretty shaken about it. I only just thought to post it here, so here goes. On Friday afternoon, I got a call from my friend named Sarah, asking if I wanted to meet her and another friend, Lisa, at Dunkin Donuts, as we hadn't seen one another in a while. Dunkin Donuts is a 15-minute walk from my house, so I decided I would walk. Besides, the weather was fine. I got to Dunkin Donuts and found where Sarah and Lisa were sat, so I went to join them. As we were chatting, I noticed that my sister Elena was sat at a table in the corner of the room with her friend Jess. For some context, my sister and her friend are both 18 years old. My sister still lives with my parents, whereas I live alone. I excused myself from the table and went over to Elena and Jess's table. They were sat at a table with 3 seats, so I went to sit down and said hey. They both jumped a little bit, but then looked more relieved than anything to see me. Immediately, Elena whispered to me, "Don't look now, but the guy in the blue shirt, I think he's been following Jess and I." I glanced over and I saw the middle-aged man sat at the table facing away from us. He's passed our table a good 5 times in the past 20 minutes to go to the bathroom, but he walks slower as he passes us, she continued. I told them that they were most likely being paranoid, and that there was nothing to worry about. But for their peace of mind, I offered to leave with them so they wouldn't feel as worried. I walked back over to my table and explained the situation to Sarah and Lisa. Both of them laughed it off and assumed my sister to be paranoid. Literally about a minute later, I saw the man get up from his seat and walk towards the bathroom. My eyes followed him, and sure enough, he walked extremely slow past Elena and Jess. In fact, it was almost comical how obviously slow he became. Both Elena and Jess looked in my direction and I nodded to show that I had seen him walk slower. About 5 minutes later, I went into the toilets. On my way, I passed Elena and Jess and told them I was ready to leave whenever they were. They both agreed that they were ready to leave now. I told them I was just going to the bathroom and that we could leave after I had done my business. Elena had come in her car, so she was going to give me a lift back. I went to the toilet stall, did my business, washed my hands. I was walking down the corridor back into the main eating area when Elena and Jess rushed into the corridor. I asked them what's up, and they explained that another man had joined the strange creeper man and that the men were both pointing and staring at them, so they rightfully felt unsafe. We walked back into the eating area. I put my money on our table and explained to Lisa and Sarah that I was taking off, and I would explain what was going on when I got home. We all got into Elena's car and left the creeps in the car's rear view mirror. After a 2-minute drive, we reached my house. Just then, I remembered that I had been meaning to return something I had borrowed from my mother, so I asked if Elena could drive me to my parents' house as she was going there anyway. I jumped out of the car to get what I needed when my phone rang. It was Elena. She explained that a car had driven past and had pulled into a driveway. She said the driver of the vehicle was the creep from Dunkin Donuts. I looked out of my window and sure enough there was a car which didn't belong to the owner of the house parked on their driveway. I got the girls into my house and locked the door. I instructed Elena to take a photo of the car and its license plate, and I told Jess to call 911 as she gave the operator more information than what I could. Elena took the photos and we sort of gathered around Jess as she was speaking to the operator. She had finished telling the story and I heard the operator assure us that police would be at my house soon. A few minutes passed and there was a loud knock at the front door, followed by a loud voice shouting, "It's the police." We all did a sigh of relief as I went to open the door. Jess told the operator that the police were here and she hung up. I was in the process of unlocking the door when I thought to look through the spy hole at the top of the door. I peered through and it wasn't a police officer, it was the same guy. I froze in fear and I didn't know what to say. We didn't call the police. I managed to shout back to the man through the door. Elena and Jess were both confused as to why I said this. "We had a call, sir," the man shouted back. "You have the wrong address," I yelled back and informed the girls that it was the creep at the door and not a police officer. Both were rightfully shocked and extremely scared as I was. I was about to tell Jess to call the police again until I heard the sirens. "Sir, you have to let me in," the man shouted again. This time I didn't answer. He was pounding on the door. His commands for me to let him in turned into begging and pleading. I heard the police car pull up and some commotion outside. An actual police officer knocked on the door and I let him in. Yes, I checked the spy hole first. The police officers took the man into custody while another police officer took Elena and Jess into the dining room for some brief questioning. I called my parents and Jess called hers. Both were here extremely quickly once we told them what had happened. The man was found with a kitchen knife on his person and some other weapons in his car. Who knows what could have happened if I hadn't looked through the spy hole first. Both my sister and a friend are fine, just shaken up after the whole incident. So, guys, told my sister and her friend, let's not meet. Edit, I wanted to protect the identity of my sister and her friend as much as possible, so I changed the place where it happened. It wasn't actually a Dunkin Donuts. I'm a guy for those using female pronouns. Someone in the comments said, "Bro tip, never hang up like that on a 911 operator. They could have told you guys the police weren't there yet." And yeah, that is a rationalize and, give information like, oh, the police aren't there yet, so do not open the door. By the way, that one was by TW1706. I don't think I said that before. That's really scary, but he's a very good brother for looking after and hearing his sister and her friend out like that when everyone else thought they were just paranoid. Okay. I think. That is gonna be the last video of the night. Let me know in the comments if you guys enjoyed this one and what kind of stories video you would like next. Also, let me know if there's anything else in general that you would like to see. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed the video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, have a good day, have a good night, morning, or whenever you're watching this video.